My guest today is Libby Bleakley. Libby has got a wonderful project going in Timor Leste, which we want to talk about. But just by background, Libby was a police officer for many, many years in the New South Wales Police Force, and was involved in addressing issues of sexual assault and domestic violence and a whole range of issues affecting Indigenous communities and those crossing over into corrective services. She, after 19 years, moved across into the Australian Federal Police and was deployed by them to work together with the UN in places like Sudan and then Timor Leste, and now is working full-time on that project as a volunteer. And she subsidises and funds herself through a couple of very innovative business enterprises. So, Libby, a big welcome to you, and I hope I've got that vaguely all correct.
Yes, you did. Thank you, Ian. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Well, thank you. Your bio is such an interesting read, and you have a book. Is that a biography, or is it about some specific aspect of your work?
It's pretty much about my life being deployed to different missions with the Federal Police. So It's not the typical lock me up crime type book that a police officer may write. My passion was becoming immersed in different communities, and it's about the communities that I was living in for many years, and stories of the characters there and my connections.
Yeah, I just had a very quick look before we jumped online, and it's available on Kindle. So I'm going to be downloading it in the next week because I've got plenty of time on my hands at the moment. Well, I haven't really got plenty of time on my hands, but I'm not traveling and I'm not going out anywhere, and we're all in lockdown. Announced today in lockdown for another 6 weeks. So yay us. But the book is called On a Mission, yeah?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
And you've read that a couple of years back?
I did. I left policing altogether about 2 years ago. And I had actually been writing that book since I started in 2008 on my first deployment. So I kept like a journal and was emailing home to my family and friends, and each week they'd sit down and go, wow, I'm going to grab a glass of wine or a coffee because I feel like I'm living your life in that community. And so at the end of it, people just encouraged me and said, put it together as a book. So for me, any opportunity to raise funds for our centre in Timor, I thought it's a good way to do it.
Okay, well, let's talk briefly about what this centre in Timor is, and then perhaps we'll come back to it in more detail. But what's going on over there?
I was deployed there for 3 years in total with the Federal Police. And during that time, you can either go two ways. You can either sort of stick to yourselves and all the expats in a country, or you can throw yourself in after hours and do things. And for me, I've got such a passion and interest for people of different cultures. So I started to learn the language, and after work, I discovered things that the community needed. And that's the biggest thing, is consulting community. What do they need? Not what we think as white fellas that they need, because it doesn't work that way. So I started to see that in Timor especially, there's a population of 1.1 million, and 2/3 of that population at the time were, 2/3 were under 30 years of age. And unemployment in youth was so high that there was a lot of problems with gangs. And most of it was they had nothing to do. So a lot of the young men that had girlfriends in the districts, lived in the districts, needed to get money to find a dowry to be able to pay, and look after, not pay for a wife, that's wrong, but pay for, have some money to be able to support that family. And so a lot of them had this idea of go to the city, go into Dili, we'll get jobs. And they didn't. It was really difficult. So some of them had to survive on the streets. Some just got into strife on the streets. And I discovered that, okay, how about we start doing some training? There was quite a few gyms, and a lot of the boys wanted to get involved in bodybuilding or boxing, but they couldn't afford those gyms. So for me, we had a police academy gym. So for 2 years, I trained the local police on how to use equipment, how to run systems, how to make sure things weren't knocked off, even if it was by the local police, how to take ownership and respect what they had. And the other side was there's a big issue with domestic violence in every country I've been in. but also in Timor-Leste. So I spend a lot of time with the women. My background in domestic violence and child protection was a good one to have, to be able to do spontaneous learning and just sitting with the women and talking and earning trust.
Yes.
And teaching English. Everyone wanted to learn how to speak English. And half the time you'd go into a village and someone would have their vocab would be, hello, hello, I love you, I love you. And you think, I love you too. And it was just like, they want to learn. How many children do you have? Are you married? How old are you? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like practice everything from little kids to old people.
Yeah.
So I started teaching basic English. And then sewing. I was doing some sewing for my grandbabies that were being born as I was on different missions. And I'd sit down and be sewing little things for a quilt. And so the women wanted to learn those things and they'd show me different skills. So over the 3 years, I guess I became known in those areas, and people knew that after hours you could come to whatever area and learn something or sit around. And when I finished, I grieved for community every mission I finished. But Timor, being such a close country, only 1 hour from Darwin, I knew I could go back quite easily. So in my own time, I was still working for the Federal Police, but in my own time, for the last 5 years of my career working at Sydney Airport or other jobs, I would go on my leave and I would keep going back, and I started to look for land, find some land over there. You can't buy land, but leasing land. So another federal officer, Teresa Beck, and myself were doing that, and Teresa helped in the beginning to put in some of her funds as well. We found some land, and then we decided, you know what the country needs? It's what they asked for.
We know that Timor was, up until I think 1999, part of Indonesia, and then you ended up being there in the aftermath of that event, although some years later.
Yeah.
So what's happening there now? You know, have they, in becoming their own little nation, sponsored in part by the Australian government, have they found their footing, or is there a lot of social issues going on?
There's still a bit of both. They really progressed, and I was fortunate enough to be there during elections in 2012 and being part of that with UN, and then being there, not being with UN, being part of the 2 years Australian Federal Police mission where I was in Dili itself. So from being in the jungle with the UN for a year, seeing and living with the communities there, being just myself and my friend Teresa, the other AFP officer, 2 white women in this whole town, and then being in Dili. And in Dili, we were there when the UN pulled out. And the fear in some of the local people, because we built that trust, they'd be saying to us, we've been digging up underneath our huts, we've been putting our paperwork in there, we're putting our whatever they had that was important, because they were fearful of their military or their police beating them and doing things that had happened sort of in the past or things like that. And then the difference of when actually the UN left, the local people going to different little huts for their restaurants where the UN would take over, and going to different places. And it was like the confidence and the ownership of, we don't need all the UN and everyone here. This is our country. This is how we're going to go. And even the police, they've still got some AFP over there from what I'm hearing, teaching in the academy and things. But the police, some of them did go back to old ways and didn't change everything, but there was still a lot of upskilling in things. Problems with gangs are still there. So when we built our centre, we only officially opened in 2016. Now, that had nothing to do with Australian Federal Police. I ended up joining Rotary and fundraising over $300,000 to build this little centre. And every year we need about $40,000 to keep it going. We've employed 8 Timorese staff. We built a little cottage there for the 2 managers and their mum to live.
What roles would those employed staff have?
Okay, so we built I wanted to build in one of the harder areas where more gangs were. So of course we find the land we want there, and we we sublease it off an Australian company over there. So we subleased this land, and then we built a classroom. So we have 120 students, and we trained 2 Timorese people to be teachers there. We don't want whiteys running it. It's not our place. We can give that hand and help monitor it and train people, but it's theirs, and that's why it's working. So we have a gym with over 700 registered members, and that's it's one of the best gyms in the country, and it's a full Plus Fitness gym. Now, the 2 men over here that started Plus Fitness, I wanted to use their colours, the purpley colour and orange. I said, I love the colours. This is what I'm doing. Can I use your sort of ideas? They were so excited. They said, we'll give you half the equipment. We'll come over and install it. We'll give you all the T-shirts. And they've continued to do that, which is fabulous. We have we have 3 rival gangs in our area. Now, mind you, Shanana Guzman, he's our patron. He used to be Prime Minister, he used to be President at different stages. He's our patron, and we asked him to be our patron because he outlawed gangs. And I thought, there's always a cheeky side to me. I thought, yeah, I know you've outlawed them, but I'm going to get your gangs to come and hang out here and, make a difference. And so they did. And he, was quite surprised, like, how did that work? But we have 3 rival gangs, and my manager, his job is to make sure the centre's running, to give me a weekly report. He rings in daily to say, guess what's happening today? Or, different things. So his brother is the assistant manager as well. Their job is to monitor and check the gym's running properly, interview each person. I took off all of 2016 from the police so I could take my long service and build the centre and train the staff. So I was comfortable with that. Then every member is interviewed. We made up this form. It's like, okay, where do you live? Did you go to school? How old were you when you finished school? How many siblings have you got? Just different things about them. And then, because Timorese is so honest, I put on there, and are you a gang member? Well, everyone that was, yep. Okay, what gang? So I had all this information going, okay, we've got some rival gangs here. Normally they machete or whatever and have fights and, land disputes and things. But these rival gangs, they knew who they were, and they're all mates in the gym. Last year, my manager rang me, and he rang me early. Normally he rings in the afternoon, but it was an early morning call. And I thought, what's wrong? And he goes, I'm so exciting. I said, why are you exciting? He said, well, I want to tell you something, and you're going to be so happy for the whole of the day, so you have to know early. I said, what happened? I'm on the phone. He goes, we've got our own gang. And I've just gone, oh, shit. I said, tell me about that, thinking don't burst his bubble. I said, tell me about that. And he goes, they all get together on Sundays and they all go around town. And I thought, and what do they do? He said, they clean up the city. I said, what? And he said, they call themselves the Plus Fitness family. They put in 20 cents or 10 cents each. And on Sunday, they go and buy garbage bags. And they said, Mana Libby, like Mrs. Mana Libby, and you have taught us this is free for us. We have to respect this. We look after our things. And then we're looking around going, why is everyone throwing rubbish? So they were even going to the churches, because they're all Catholic, telling the priest, you want to get your parishioners out there and clean up this place. Yeah. So they go around town. And when someone dies or whatever, a family member, anybody at our centre, they'll put in money and get bags of rice and go visit the home. And I was just so proud. I thought, yes, I am going to be exciting all day. Because it was beautiful because they've got ownership. All the memberships are free, but none of this bullshit handout mentality. I said, what are you going to do for us? I don't know. Be security. I said, we don't need security. You've all got membership cards that are laminated with your number on it. I said, if you're not a member, you don't come in. So here's my boys, my gang members with their mohawks and their tattoos. And when I'm there, I hear the music pumping and they're up dusting the windowsills, cleaning the gym equipment, vacuuming. never seen a vacuum. They must vacuum frigging 50 times a day. It's beautiful. And then the girls are doing other work. Like I said, no, it's not men's work, women's work. Our first rule at that place is respect. Respect. If you don't treat women or children with respect, or anybody else, you're out and you're barred for a month. And mind you, these young bodybuilders, they're not going to do that. So, and then the English school is the basic English, and the kids can be as young as 5. We did make it like 8 years of age, but we get these tiny tots coming in going, I'm nearly 8. And I'd say, I don't think you're 8 yet. I will be in 3 years. And I thought,
is this after school or a school in its own right?
School in Timor is only half days.
Yeah.
So if you're at school, you might go 7 or 8 in the morning till lunchtime. So those kids can come to us for a 2-hour session in the afternoon. And the ones that go in the afternoon, they come to us. And so, yeah. And then we have 5 women in the sewing centre. And right now, when we've been locked down over there since April, they've been making thousands and thousands of masks and things like that. So they're either giving them away. So people might donate to me, you know, whatever amount of money, and I'll say, okay, a Rotary Club just gave me $500. I'm going to be buying masks from our sewing ladies, which covers all their wages. And those masks, they're going to go and give to the local school or the local community. So they give them away, but people here may have donated. So we keep the centre going. So there's a lot of tricky ideas how to keep money rolling into that centre. But it's I miss not going. I would go every 3 months, but I'm really proud of the staff taking it on themselves. They've done so well. And that's what it's about. Ownership, respect, and being theirs. We don't let white people use our gym because they've got money to pay for it somewhere else in town. So no, they have their own things.
I think there's a number of humanitarian initiatives around the world that have had to fast track the handover to the local people, which they said years ago they were going to do.
Yeah, it's true.
But you've had that built into your philosophy from the get-go, so that's wonderful. How does your background in addressing issues of domestic violence and child protection, how has that been of use in Timor-Leste?
Even just going to our centre, I've got a little cottage there too with the other federal police officer that put money in, Teresa, my good friend, and we'll go over there. So we've got our own little cottage, but which is in the centre as well, but it's the boys are using it now, we're not there. I would go there, and because I've learnt the language, I can hear what those blokes are saying in the gym, and they forget that I know even the slang words. So if I hear a disrespect about a female or whatever, they all get pulled into line, and we sit down and go, okay, so you might say this about a female, but I've seen your mum and your grandma. What would you do if one of these boys said that about your grandma? Oh, I'd kill him. And I'd think, well, okay, we won't do that, but this is about respect. You've got daughters. They all have kids very young. There's other ways of some of the women will come there. We've got a beautiful little green garden area and veggie gardens. You can't grow grass in Timor. So we were so lucky to get this grass, and it's just a safe haven that women will come and sit there with their kids. And we know, you know, when you see an injury, or we know the signs, and you'll sit there with them and you'll talk to them, and I know I don't want to be at home today. And sometimes I'm lucky because I know all the local police. Get the police in. Sometimes the police may be offenders, and we'll say, we're not putting up with that. You can't do it just because you're a cop. So we talk openly about it, and the kids in the class as well, like, you've got to feel safe. It's not okay for these things to happen. And I think talking about it, whereas they're very private on things like, no, that's family business. And I said, well, it's not anymore. You know, that's your family. You've got to protect them. And there will always be things that happen we don't like, but we can make it more open. Like, you know, you don't own your girlfriend. Why can't she come to the gym? I don't want the men looking at her, but you're trying to control her. Why don't you talk to the men and tell them not to look at her? You know, it's not her problem. So it's always talking. And then I find that you've got these relationships with the young boys that want to come in and talk about contraceptives and all sorts of stuff, because I'm like the mother, and you think, oh, Lord, what have I got myself into?
Wow. So here you are living in Sydney, you've got a couple of initiatives going to provide funding for this, with the proceeds of the book, obviously. And what else have you got going?
When I left the police, like, I can't keep still. That's never going to happen. And I'm thinking, okay, my passion now, during my time there too, I knew my passion is my family and how important life is and how quick it can change. And I thought, okay, so another idea, always creating projects and ideas. I thought, how can we raise funds? And my manager over there, his family are all coffee people in Timor. And mind you, I never drank coffee until the last 3 years. I had hated coffee, so I didn't drink it. If I did, I pretend to drink it, and lucky we sit on the ground over there because it didn't stay in long enough for me to drink it. But I thought, okay, I could go into coffee roasting. So my husband was just like, where did you get that idea? I said, I thought about it one day and I thought, Google how to roast coffee. And I found out that the simplest way for me now at this age and stage is not learning all the scientific techniques of a big drum roaster, but to get an air roaster. So we can profile, and my husband, being like the mad scientist, can do all the profiling and the science behind it. And it's like a recipe for me that I just have to fill the machine with green bean and whatever. But we have a coffee cart at the Carriage Works Farmers Market every Saturday, except for during the last few weeks with lockdown. And we sell our coffee there. We buy directly from a farmer in Byron Bay. So we've got Australian coffee.
Okay.
And then we also buy through exporters that I know, importers, exporters, for Timor. So we get really good Timor coffee. And I know the farms there because I go out to those farms to make sure that it's fair trade and they're treated properly and paid properly. So for me, that's good. We use other culture coffees as well. So that's one way. And just going around doing public speaking, different clubs. You don't get paid for that, but it's like, once people hear you, they go, oh, we'd like to do something. So it's not like, I've got people that don't have any money. And if they give me $5 Australian is about $3 American, that's half a day's wage for one of my women in the sewing centre. And for them, my sewing ladies, some of their husbands are unemployed. So they're held in high esteem in their village because they've got a full-time job. And one woman, I'm actually godmother to one of her babies, she built her own house. So there was like 20 of them living together. She built right next door, and during the few years of working with us, she built a little Besser brick home. And it's like, wow, that wife of that household got to build the house. So empowering women is one of my delights, to be able to do that. Yeah. And some of the stories, we've got some incredible children that started off learning English. Have we got time for a story about?
Please, I was going to say, tell us a story.
Lydia. Now, Lydia was when Teresa and I started that 2016. So that was my year of stress. You wouldn't want to come near me sometimes. I was like a bulldog. I had 36 Timorese men working on our property. And I made the mistake one day by saying, do you like a cup of tea? Well, 36 cups of tea took me half a day, and then they wanted a second round. So I'm thinking now, how do I stop this without being rude and whatever? Anyway, Lydia would come to our classes, and I was teaching the English in those days. She was 12. She was up from the village. And Teresa said to me, oh, Lydia's out the front. She wants to come and talk. I said, I can't do it right now. You talk to her. And Teresa had come back. I think she wants a whiteboard marker. I said, why? She said, well, the big whiteboard's out the front with a big poster on it about our centre. And she said, I think she's going to draw on there. I said, fine, give her one. Anyway, Teresa came back another few minutes later. She goes, she's got she's given back the paper on the whiteboard. I think she's going to translate it. And I said, that's fine. And she said, you should come and see her. And I felt bad after about half an hour. And I thought, all right, I'll go out the front. So I walked out the front. There's no Lydia. There's no whiteboard. And there's no big whiteboard stand. And I thought, she's knocked it off. And I said to Teresa, I said, what happened? And she went, oh, I'm really sorry. I said, what? Teresa couldn't speak any Tetum at all except for a few words. I said, what happened? She goes, I don't know what she was saying to me the whole time. And I said, but what did you say? And she said, I said, bele, bele, and that means you can, you can. I said, oh, for God's sake, she's asked you for everything and you've said yes, and that's the only big whiteboard and stand, and she's probably asked to take it home. So 2 days later, Lydia comes to class, and I thought, be gentle. I said, oh, Lydia. I said, how are you? I'm so, and she's saying in her language, oh, Mana Libby, I'm so happy. I said, oh, are you? What's happened? Mana Teresa gave me the whiteboard. She said I could have it. And I said, did she? And the stand. And I thought, how the hell did she get that home? She said she dragged it for 2 kilometres along the dirt road and up into the village, up the hills. And I thought, her mum and dad probably have a cigarette shop. And I said, oh, so you've got it there? I thought, I'll never get it back. I said, oh, mum and dad have a shop? And she looked at me and went, no. I said, what are you doing? And she said, I'm teaching English in the village to all the little kids that can't get in our class. Oh, just my heart. And then this went on for months. I thought, I have to go up there. Typical cop. I had to check it out. So I walked up there, and here's this open hut with her stuff there. And she asked me, she wanted more whiteboard markers, and very convincing. And then the next few weeks we had exams. She said, could I have an exam paper? My students are doing this. And okay. And then I had really expensive dictionaries. I need a dictionary. I'll need both of those dictionaries to be able to teach properly. And I thought, oh, yeah, okay, Lydia. Then on the last day, she came in and said, my students are also late. Can you get me a watch like yours? And I thought, so when I came back from my time away, I'd go back that year, 2016, I'd be there 3 weeks, come home for a week, back and forth. And sure enough, turned up with the watch. And that was Lydia. And I had all these little kids that couldn't get in our class, all walking down the street. Good morning, how are you? I love you. And it was people like her that you think, this is what it's about. She was teaching security guards we were in an industrial area. Just different stories, you know.
Yeah.
We do a lot of outreach at our centre.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the gym, the sewing centre and the English school. It's an outreach place where a lot of groups in Australia, or mostly New South Wales, are making these sanitary kits, reusable sanitary kits called Days for Girls. Have you heard about that?
Yes, I've heard about it in Africa, but I haven't heard about it in Timor.
And there's groups out at Lithgow, Portland and in Sydney. The Days for Girls women for the last 6 years have been making me thousands of kits. And we give them away, birthing kits. Yes. So people know, oh, the centre's got it. Mana Libby Centre's got it. Go see Manager Dee Dee. And they can get these for free. And baby stuff like beanies. You wouldn't think people would wear beanies over there, but it's freezing cold in some of the villages. And if you sleep in a big bamboo bed with half your family and chickens, and it's an open place, it's cold. So we were taking them out to some of the remote villages, these Days for Girls kids. And one day I had probably 30 women lining up for them. And so I was giving them out, but I had to open them up and trying to find words in the words I didn't know in their language about how to use them. And then I had this young guy trying to line up saying, give me one. I said, go away. No, give me one. There was nice coloured bags with everything in it. I said, it's not for you. And the women are going, oh, don't tell them, don't tell him. They were so embarrassed. And I thought, So I found a pair of bright green, because they come with undies, bright green Bonds undies. And I said, oh, do you want to come? And he's gone, arrogant little sod he was. He came across and I went, would you like these? Oh, I've never seen a fella run through the jungle as fast as him. The women were laughing. But the old lady, she would have been in her 80s. She stood back and she said, she came quietly over. She said, I would like one. And I thought, wow, I really haven't explained these well enough. And I've sort of explained again. I said, Auntie, Tia is Auntie. I said, Tia, you don't need one. And she's just, her eyes filled up and she said, yes, I do. And I thought, then her niece said to me, Auntie does need one. I said, she doesn't get her period. And she said, she had 20 children. Oh, incontinence. I've gone, penny dropped, and I thought, how do I say incontinence in Tetum? So I'm thinking sign language will be interesting. So I thought, I looked at her and I sneezed, I went, achoo, and then I've held myself, and she goes, yes, yes, yes. And I thought, of course she has incontinence. So I gave it to her. I'll never forget her. She held my face. She was crying and she was so tiny, held my face. I explained my mum and my mum's church and these other ladies in the church made them. And she kept saying, God bless your mother, God bless all of you. She said, I can go to church again. I can go to the shop again. I can do this. And I thought, you poor darling, like they wear the long skirts. And I thought, oh, and then she's holding this. I'll send you a photo of her, Ian. Yeah. She's holding the bag and she's looked around and she's pointed at all these old ladies. You, come on. She's got the same problem. You don't, you do. Come on. So now I've got all these groups making incontinence ones. So you've just got to find out what they need. But there's so many beautiful stories. Yes. That's for my second book.
Yes. Oh, I think you've got at least another book in you. Wow. It has been informative, it's been educational, it's been inspiring, it's been entertaining, all of that and more talking with you, Libby. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time, and we wish you all the very best. I'm sure if we check in another year to hear what you're up to, there'll be some evolution of it in some form. So, yeah. So thanks again. And
thank you, Ian. I feel very humbled to be able to talk to you. So thank you very much.